you all so much for coming to join us today for this panel. I couldn't be more excited for this. You are really in for a treat because we have three experts on applying AI to transform clinical workflows and also drug discovery and development. I do want to introduce our panelists in a little bit more detail just because they have such esteemed backgrounds. I want to start with Guillaume Bazy. He's a PharmD Executive MBA with more than 20 years of experience in pharma, tech transfer offices, and AI health tech startups. As we heard, he's the Partnerships Director France at Alken, which is a French-US tech bio company with 350 collaborators specializing in oncology, cardiology, inflammatory, and immune diseases. His team is dedicated to developing partnerships with top-tier hospitals and academic centers to access the multimodal patient data needed to accelerate the development of precision therapeutics. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
On the clinician side, we have Professor X, as we were talking about backstage. Dr. Xavier Alacoque, he's the medical director. He's a medical doctor, an attending physician. He's an anesthesiologist and an intensivist in pediatric congenital heart disease. He's a former professor at the University of California, San Francisco, chief data officer, chief information security officer, a colonel in the French Military Cybersecurity Command Center. He learned his IT skills at MIT, where he specialized in big data, machine learning, and applied AI in medicine. So perfect person to join us. Thank you so much, Dr. Xavier. And finishing with Nicolas Malival, who's the lead architect at Biogen Digital Health. He oversees the use of technology to build digital solutions that help Biogen advance research and innovation in the neuroscience field, or that better support patients with personalized and digital medicine. So thank you for joining us. And I'm Alex Merwin, Head of Growth for Healthcare and Life Sciences Startups at AWS. I have 15 years experience building commercially focused teams in digital health, advertising, and big tech. I apply my experience working at 2 unicorn startups to help startups building on AWS resolve business, regulatory, and technical challenges. So we're going to start off with Guillaume. I'd like to begin just hearing your thoughts a little bit more about what Alken does. So maybe we can talk a little bit about how you apply AI to solve complex biology and bridge that to new therapeutics.
Yeah, thank you, Marvin, for the invitation. So we all know that today we need better drugs, we need better targets, we need to have better clinical trials. And at Alken, we by using artificial intelligence applied to multimodal patient data, we are facing finally 2 main challenges. The first one is really to the fact that targets do not always convert to efficient drugs because patient data are underused to understand the heterogeneity of diseases, and especially in cancer. And secondly, the fact that the targets the drug responses, vary between patients. And this is especially the case for cancer, since we lack understanding of tumor microenvironment and the drug mechanism, in fact. And at Alken, by analyze the multimodal data from clinic, from biology, from imagery, from omic, we can develop artificial intelligence engines which are able to capture the causal evidence and to better understand all the heterogeneity of the disease, and especially for cancer. And that's what we do.
So one of the themes that I wanted to dig into on this panel, with somebody driving innovation from industry like Alken, and also a preeminent research institution like IUCT, is data access. So these AI models, garbage in, garbage out is kind of the old, trope within data science. But truly, it's really difficult to access this data in a ethical way and in a privacy compliant way. So I'd love to hear your perspective on how Alken sources the data that it needs to fuel these models, and in particular, how that approach has evolved over time. So there could be earlier stage companies in the audience. So do you have any comments on that?
Yeah. Since 2016, in fact, we are developing a kind of patient data network with hospitals, with academic centers, and all over the world, in the US and in Europe. And this is And we are able to do that because from the beginning, we consider that the data have to stay inside the center. So we develop from the beginning federated learning techniques, and the data remains locked in the center, and the algorithm travel from center to center to be trained center to center, and this is the way that we address the data privacy and all the concern about the privacy and the protection of the data.
I see. So you bring the model to the site and you deploy it locally so the patient data can stay at rest. So Xavier, I'd love to come to you and hear about your perspective from a site point of view. So you know, in your experience, more on the research side, you know, when you're working with a collaborator, are there any common mistakes that collaborators make when they're asking for data? Just things they get wrong, they don't think about? And are there any best practices when you're working with a collaborator that, you know, asks for data from IUCT OncoPol in an ideal way? What are your thoughts?
Actually, this is very difficult to access to the data, and this is the pain point inside the AI production. Actually, this is the emerging part of the iceberg if you want to produce AI in healthcare. This relates to the big data dimension of the healthcare system and the healthcare data. This rely on volume, velocity, variety, veracity, and value, but you will be using AI in a very clever axis if you can, in order to liberate the access to the data and make it interoperable. We do have a lot of unstructured data, so AI can be seen as a science knowledge enabler inside the unstructured data. You can exploit the reports which have been made by the MDs and so on, and which are not really clearly seen inside the electronic medical record. So you can enable the knowledge inside the data. And there is another point inside the big data axis of the medical data we are seeing at the moment. This is the velocity of the data, because we are in front of a very huge system of IoT and electronical devices, which will provide a better insight inside the life pathway of the patient inside the healthcare system, and we will need AI in order to interpret and to enable knowledge and veracity inside the data. And we cannot do it without any help of the AI actually at the moment. So there are a lot of particularity of the healthcare system and the data we do have inside the healthcare system, which will be enabled by the AI at the end in order to provide and to make them available to the research and AI production with the other industry connections.
Thank you very much for that. Nicolas, I'd like to come to you. You know, we've just heard about you know, a federated approach that Alcon takes, bringing the model to the site, running models locally in order to derive the insights they need to fuel their predictions. We learned about, you know, the volume of data, the velocity at which it's coming to, you know, Xavier in his hospital, you know, the difficulties in validating the veracity of that data. You know, really this just gets harder over time. So, you know, from a technical perspective, it'd be great to hear your opinion and thoughts on what some of the technical challenges are of integrating AI within a healthcare environment. And I believe you worked on a project at Biogen, this digital health AWS landing zone. So if, you know, any of those lessons, you know, gave you learnings that you applied when working on that project, it'd be great to hear about that.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation first, and thanks for the question, because this is a topic where we spend quite a lot of time. And I would extend the term, landing zone, to everything that needs to be done before we can really start to do AI. And I think it's totally reasonable for like someone to create a cloud account, like an AWS account, and do some experimentation with public data. But if you really want to work with real patient data in a regulated industry like ours, it takes more effort than this. It's not reasonable to just go with developers creating AWS accounts. And I think you need to find the right balance between control and agility. So you don't want, for example, developers to access production data without any control, or you don't want them to push new version of machine learning model without any pre-check or validation. But on the other end, you don't want people to spend weeks or months waiting for their data access request to be fulfilled. So you need to establish something that will enable people to build and to produce outcome, but at the same time in compliance. And some of example of what we did at Biogen. So for example, we implemented a lot of guardrails and rules in terms of I would say data encryption, data privacy, so that we can control things before they happen, or we can instruct developers or Steam what they are allowed to do. So we make sure that they can keep access, for example, to production, but in rules and in guardrails that we define. We also work on data platform, and the objective is to provide self-service access to the data scientists or to the scientists that need to make use of the data, but we need to make it with proper traceability, with proper data segregation, especially in terms of clinical trial. And we also adapted the quality management system that we have so it can be much more easier to push new release to production depending on the code that we want to update. And so we can keep this agility and this flexibility while being compliant, especially when we are dealing with software as medical device. So all of this might be seen as non-differentiating because we haven't really started talking about AI with what we build. But I think like building the right foundation is a key enabler for the rest of the work to be done. Yeah.
So I'd like to go a little bit deeper on these requirements, right? These regulations that we have to follow within our industry. And just to take a step back and talk about why we do that. So the ethics of how AI should be used in healthcare. And really we're dealing with very vulnerable people at a very difficult time in their life. And there's a higher bar, and there really should be. And Xavier, I wanted to come back to you because I know you've done a lot of work in pediatrics, which, you know, for any parent or people who engage with children regularly, there is no more sensitive patient population than that. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts because, you know, in your career, you've been, you know, at the leading edge of innovation with AI in healthcare. And how do you balance the need to be innovative, but while maintaining a high ethical bar? So we heard it, you know, kind of exemplified there in the trade-off between agility and control, right, from the control plane from Nicola. But how have you balanced that trade-off across your career?
This is a very tricky point, actually. For the vulnerable patients, we do have to provide research because there are only a few inside the data sets, and we need to provide some tools for the medical physician, the attending physician. And in the other hand, they are so vulnerable that we need to develop in the data warehouse a kind of very strict governance in order to protect the data and to be totally sure that nothing could leak from this secret place. So this is a kind of trade-off between the value of the data you can enable from their data and the very vulnerable part of the population of the patients you are dealing with.
Wonderful, thank you. And I wanted to ask you for some practical tips on how people could, action the advice you're giving, but you just did it, so we'll continue. But having that control plan, I think, is really important, and not relying on best intentions. You really need a mechanism in place to manage this. Guillaume, I'd like to come to you next. So applying AI to advance innovation and drug discovery is a multidisciplinary task. You need experts in the underlying disease biology. You need clinical leads in order to help with validation and trial design. You need computer scientists who understand how to do everything end-to-end, from ML ops to core data science and analytics. Can you speak a little bit to how to create a multidisciplinary team in this space and direct them toward this challenge? And because how do you get these people to speak the same language, first off, much less motivate them? So what have you found works?
Fully, this is not my job on the day-to-day activity, but I can talk about a little bit about how we do it at Owken. In fact, you have to understand, Owken today is an international company based in the US, in the Europe. We are about 350 people, and a majority of them, I must say half of them, are specialized in tech, with data scientists, with biostatistician, tech developer, computational biologist. But on the other hand, we have team dedicated to research, with medical doctors, with biomedical researchers, and all of them they work together on a specific project. So and this is part of our value. Our values are about collaboration, curiosity, and we make them share their different point of view, their different knowledge on a day-to-day basis. And also, we are supported by a board of advisors from different fields, from different therapeutic areas, and for each project, before we go on a project, we take advice with independent medical advisors to be sure that we will go in the right direction. And this is the way we are quite doing the thing well, I must say. We did mistakes, of course, but we learn by artificial intelligence is a new field, so we iterate and we learn project by project. And today we are present in all the entire value chain, from the dataset identification to provide validated machine learning models to professionals and patients, because a few months ago we launched our first diagnostic tools, CE marked, in colorectal cancer. So yeah, we have the ambition to go to the clinical development, but we will learn.
Well, congratulations on your progress in that disease area and with the diagnostic. And I'm hearing that, A, you recognized with humility where the boundaries of your knowledge were, and you brought on advisors and experts in that space to help. You had a culture where people were comfortable making mistakes, but had high enough standards to ensure they didn't make them twice. And then also a set of shared values, in a strong mission where even people working from very different disciplines could align on a larger North Star. Nicola, I'd like to hear from you. So, like Owken's 350 people, Biogen's obviously much larger. Were there any common threads, in kind of facilitating multidisciplinary teamwork that you've observed in your time? Or, how would you answer that same question about how, a multidisciplinary team can come together to, drive impact applying AI in healthcare?
Yeah, I can answer with what I've observed at Biogen Digital Health. And I think first, before you can apply AI, there is a long path to this. So you first need to collect the data, to curate the data, to analyze the data. So all of this takes time before you can really apply and develop machine learning for this. And through this journey, there will be a different team involved with different background, and they don't always understand with each other. So for example, imagine that you have to develop a mobile application which will collect sensor data from patient, and we want to generate biomarker from this from this sensor data. So you have one application team which is going to have to develop this mobile application and to collect, for example, accelerometer data from the mobile application. But they have to collect it in a way that is consistent, in the way that is predictable, and it's usable for the data scientist. So, and because then after we need to use this raw data. So, for example, you could have the application which is not clear enough, or the instructions that are not given enough. So the patient may hold the phone in their hand instead of having in the pocket where they are doing some exercise, which will give wrong measures. So this is why the developers need to understand the needs of the data scientist. And after you have collected the raw data, the data scientist can go blindly and try to find biomarker. But usually you need to understand the observation of the disease, how it works, so you can focus on very specific field of research and trying to extract information from the raw signal. So all of this required teams to collaborate, to understand each other, to understand their challenges also each other. And yeah, something that I forget is on top of that, you usually have the regulatory team, which is not always adapted to building a medical device, like a digital medical device. And when they do, sometimes they are seen more as a blocker and not as an enabler. So you need to collaborate all this team together, and this is really what is needed to make sure that you can get outcome quickly. And this might be easy in a startup because you have a few people, the roles sometimes that are overlapping, but it's more complicated in a big company.
So we're coming to the end of our time together, and I'm going to ask a lightning round style question. So imagine that it's Wednesday, November 22nd in 2018, so 5 years ago. We get in a time machine, we go back then, you can visit yourself, knowing everything you know now about how AI has progressed in the last 5 years of healthcare. I want to hear a piece of advice you'd give yourself at that point and why. And just to give you a minute or two to think about it, I think we probably could have gone another half hour with this panel. So, thank you all for joining us today. And please, come approach me or the panelists after if you have any questions. But thank you very much for joining. And so, Nicola, maybe we can start with you. If you could go into the time machine, what advice would you give yourself and why?
Yeah, I think 5 years before, from now, it was only the beginning of the HDS certification, so we didn't really have the cloud provider able to store health data. And since now it has been quite a long way, we have seen also verticalized services that have been offered by the cloud provider, which enable startups or companies to build faster. We didn't also have the same computing capabilities to build and to train the model. We didn't have the same, I would say, maturity in terms of health data digitalization, like we have seen the program like Ségur Numérique, which is getting faster and is collecting more and more data. So, but in the end, I think today the models and applying AI, the models are getting more. There are new models released every day and every week. Like you have probably heard about generative AI a lot. So the models are becoming, I would say, kind of commodity. Even if it's a little bit pejorative the way I say it, but you need to have the data in the end to be able to train the model, and it takes some time to collect. So 5 years from now, I would probably focus on collecting the data, establishing all the protocol or the partnership in place to be able to collect the data and have the data when I need to apply it right now with all the capabilities and all the tools that we have today to apply AI.
Exceptional advice. And Xavier?
Actually, I would have applied for a PhD in machine learning in order to be the bridge between the physicians and the IT people. But by the way, in the other hand, I would have focused onto the way in order to make the healthcare data interoperable and in the same place in order to speak the lingua franca in order to share it to every single type of people who are involved inside the AI production in healthcare system. Actually, this is the main pain point we do have to make it very interoperable and accessible. And I would have said that to me 5 years ago, I guess.
That's very good advice. And Guillaume, we'll finish with you.
I must say 5 years ago, I was not at Hawkins, so but I was already in the digital and artificial intelligence field. So, so we all know that, in fact, healthcare is reluctant to change. In fact, on one end, is good because it limits the risk for the patient. On the other hand, it provides inertia for our roadmaps. But we have seen hopefully that all the dimensions of the ecosystem have evolved, and now I think we have a clear vision of how we can launch and how we can provide a solution for patients. And this is what it is important, to provide really solutions that will impact the professional, the healthcare professional, and the patient. So I will hope that in 5 years I will be there too to see all this impact. In fact.
Well, we're past time. Please join me in thanking the panel. We'll see you in 5 years.